YouTube thingy. That's working. And
kids been in the church since 2017.
I will call this meeting of the Isla Vista Community Service District Policy Committee to order at 6:06 p.m. If we could, I will announce that this meeting is being recorded and request a roll call.
Dr. Aguilar here. Freeman
here.
Great.
Here.
Begins our land acknowledgement. Oh, before we begin, we'll do our land acknowledgement. Before we begin, we would like to acknowledge the Chumash people who are the traditional custodians of this land. We pay our respects to the Chumash elders, past, present, and future, who call this place, Anaskoyo, the land that Isla Vista sits upon, their home. We are proud to continue their tradition of coming together and growing as a community. We thank the Chumash community for their stewardship and support, and we look forward to strengthening our ties as we continue our relationship of mutual respect and understanding. Moving on to the public comment period. At this time, any member of the public may speak on matters within the subject matter jurisdiction of the policy committee that are not on the agenda. The committee will not take action on any item that is not on the agenda, except as provided by law. Is there any public comment? Seeing none. Moving on to discussion and action items. 3.1, public tree distribution policy. The committee will have a discussion on public tree distribution and give direction to staff.
Give me 1 second. Jenna just got into the Zoom room. Jenna, can you hear us?
Yeah, I'm in.
Perfect. Well, it's up. It's on your item now, but before Jenna goes, I'll just say that, I know we've met about this a couple times. You guys, in the last meeting said, let's see what Jenna comes up with. We trust her to go forward on this one, and she did go for it. And there's a pretty, lots of interesting and cool stuff in this policy for us to look at in terms of the goal we have for this, what we're trying to accomplish, not just distributing trees, but why we're doing it, what our metrics are, how do we measure success if we did this. So I thought she did a really good job mapping out all the different elements of this. Go ahead, Jen, if you want to present it.
Yeah, so I worked with Ken over at Your Children's Trees on this policy. He gave me a lot of really good advice and showed me this website that shows tree equity scores. So that's what a lot of this is based off of, is information from that website. And it makes it really clear where more trees are needed. And it also just makes it so clear how few trees we have in comparison to areas surrounding us, especially UCSB. So my goal with this was, so Ken, the most important thing he said is to kind of keep it flexible. Of course, there are areas in Isla Vista that clearly need trees, but at the end of the day, we are going to have to plant trees where property owners give us permission, and we can't guarantee that a bunch of property owners are going to give us permission in those areas that are lacking trees. So while those areas should be our goal, I think it would just be good to take what we can get. And when it comes to determining the exact tree for certain locations, we should definitely consult an arborist. And Ken is an arborist, and he's totally willing to work with us and donate his time in order to help with things like that.
Well, yeah, I think that's the overview on this. Do you guys have thoughts? This is a very early draft at this point. It's, the brainstorm and the notes. So we can add and subtract from this starting point.
So I'm looking down at the recommendation, and so the first recommendation is that the board adopt a 1-year pilot tree program.
This is all super draft and early, so this is like the thought process of what the next steps would be, but we don't have any of these numbers verified or worked out yet. It's just more like, if we approve this, here's what we would do next.
So is this item, are we thinking that if it's approved here policy, then it is on next week's agenda?
No.
Okay.
No. This needs a couple more policy.
Got it. Okay. Perfect. Okay. That makes more sense to me. I was just gonna say that I'm learning a lot, even just in like my scanning of like the canopy scores and also the different regions of like breaking up Isla Vista into neighborhoods. It's super informative. So even though we've talked about this a lot, like these are hugely beneficial steps for me just to look at the way I'm thinking. So what I can say right now is that this is going in a very helpful direction that I couldn't have like expected or thought about. But it's, yeah, these are things that I didn't know I should think about, but it's really helpful.
So a question that I have is that the trees will be distributed on a first come, first served basis, as long as the application is complete. We have a process here for selecting the kind of tree. So, if, is there any mechanism, and it could be that I just haven't seen it, and it could be really obvious, for us rejecting a location for any reason, or is it, or if your application is complete, there will be a tree there?
I think, oh, that's a good question. Well, part of the tree selection, maybe we can split that up between tree selection and location selection. But one of the questions, for example, is how tall is the tree? Will there be overhead utility lines there? So I think that's part of.
Well, I was kind of looking at that and I was figuring that like, okay, so that would mean that you'd select a short tree. So like if I provided like there's
Yes.
always a tree that you're going to fit into any location, but that's when I started getting concerned. I started being like, what if I go and I'm like, I want a tree right here, and they point at like, a plot of concrete that is on top of the sewer line that is unable, and that like has about 4 inches of clearance above, like, and you're like, there's no trees.
I think part of it is like we're not the permitting agency either, so I assume that if you're making changes to your property, you'd have to go also through the planning department. Like we're providing the tree for free, and we're providing the process to acquire trees, but they still have to go. And I don't know this, and maybe that's something we can look into, but the planning department does require permits for pretty much even the smallest things sometimes. So I think installing a tree would need to go through their process. I don't know how complex it is, and that could be something we look at how we integrate with, but that would be part of it. And Jenna's gone through. Oh, yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
In addition to that, there are certain reasons why we're planting trees, and we can narrow these reasons down as well, but shade is a big one. So if somebody wants a tree planted on their property that doesn't align with our values, why we're planting them in the first place, then I think that should be a reason why we wouldn't plant a 2-foot tall tree,
That's a good point, because we have like a policy goal here. And you've explained that really well, Jenna. Like our policy goal would be, obviously not approved yet, would be to increase our tree canopy. And so if somebody is, doing something that's not meeting that goal, it could at least be first come, first serve for the people who are accomplishing our goal. Like if you're putting the tree near the sidewalk to cover the sidewalk as people walk, that's a priority, I think. But there's a public interest to
that. A priority though, you're thinking like, so I kind of get the impression that maybe Jen was talking about like a Boolean decision of like if it aligns with the values that were in the policy, but you're thinking more of like that.
Like, I don't know if we can say no to people, like, we're not going to work with you at all. But if we're saying, if we have only 20 trees and we get 21 applications, we will have to then pick who gets the 20.
Oh, yeah.
And the first come, first serve can be part of it, but I think we can have a public interest piece of it.
We can, okay. Because I assumed, maybe very incorrectly, that the reason why it was very carefully here that it was first come, first serve was that that prevented some legal problem that we would run into if we started making decisions.
I think we do need to do first come, first serve, but I think at a certain point, like if you get all of them at once, you do need to make a decision. It could be, the first 20 get it, the 21 doesn't. Or it could be, 21 gets it, but 19 doesn't because it doesn't meet our policy or the public interest. And that could be part of this too, is we can say we're only wanting to support trees that have a public benefit. So if there's a tree further in on a property, does it help this overall goal? Yes. Is there as much of a public benefit? No. Because it's not on the sidewalk or not covering the sidewalk. Sorry.
I see that there is this intention that we will survey the property owners to gauge interest. But are we intending to, based on this canopy cover and equity score, attempting to go out and like actually kind of hound any of the property owners where we see like there could totally be a tree there?
Yeah, we can do that.
I mean, we are. I'm partly asking why because I'm still trying to understand the boundaries of what we're allowed to and not. Because
no, for sure.
How long we were in the situation of being like, oh, we should put trees in, and it was like legally we can't do anything.
Yeah,
and I was like, no.
I think we can. It's part of promoting the program,
Okay.
right? Like we'll go out to all the property owners, we'll let them know, and the surveying is to help refine the program too. I mean, I think we'd want to ask, is there a demand for this? And before we move forward, like, is it on any implementation? We'd want to talk with property owners to even see how they feel about this. Would they engage with this program at all? Is it like 30% are interested, no one's interested, everyone's interested? So yeah, I think that's just part of making a better program, is seeing what the users would actually do.
Okay.
But I will answer the other question. We will heavily promote this. It is not, I wouldn't say we'd want to pass this program. It's like a link on our website, sign up for a tree. I think we'd go to the quarterly property owner meetings, mention that they're able to apply for it, cultivate applications, I guess. But hopefully we don't have to. There's demand. I guess we'll judge that when we look into it.
Okay. I don't know if Olivia's been having anything to say. We don't have her video up here currently, so I don't know if she's.
She's on video. It's just let me.
It's on our. Yeah, there you go.
Hi, sorry, I am here. I'm listening. I'm still at the move-in sale, so that's why my camera's not on.
Oh, fair enough. I actually I didn't even realize that. I was just kind of saying that because like for all I know, you've been like waving your hands frantically or like looking really stern while we say something that's like, and I should have been like, oh, Olivia, what's your opinion on that? And we didn't see because on our side we were looking at the screen share. So.
Nope. I'm hearing everything.
Okay. What is very concerning though is that you're saying things, but your mouth isn't moving.
That's Jenna.
Yeah, Jenna's talking. That's okay. I have very similar feelings to Jenna. She's doing a great job. But everything sounds good. I'm really excited about the possibilities of this program. And I think this is something that would be super cool to do. I do share some of the concerns that have been brought up, but overall this sounds like a great thing. And I think, yeah, just like kind of getting it moving, doing a pilot program, seeing how things go and working out some of the kinks as we move along is going to be a good way to approach this.
All right. Yeah. So Jenna, is there any feedback that you specifically, let's see. I don't know if this is public comment or if this is not public comment, but regardless. He's one of them, yeah. But so Ken, we'll go for it. You want to.
Thank you. I think Jenna's done a great job here in identifying the need for the program. Having planted trees in Isla Vista over the years, I just have a little bit of experience to add to this process. One is that you got to put yourself in the shoes of the people who are receiving this policy, and they're going to be looking. We're going to have a little bit of flexibility. I know Jenna mentioned that. For the most part, a lot of the owners that own property, at least the apartment buildings, are going to turn this over to their management companies and say, what do you think? And a lot of those people are going to say, well, how much maintenance do I have to have with this tree? And in some cases, we may have to do a little dance with the maintenance people, because if we would plant for example, if you want to plant a nice coast live oak, native tree, coast live oak, it may get too big, or it may drop a lot of leaves, which coast live oaks do, and acorns, and it might be more appropriate to plant a smaller tree, maybe like a Chinese pistache or a Australian willow that doesn't have major maintenance issues, doesn't have as much shade, but this is a voluntary program, and the pilot program is really to get trees planted, to get the community involved, to show success. So flexibility is important. Getting buy-in is important. If you had one, the first person that came in and said, "I'll take 20 trees," I would do it simply because it becomes an example. Hey, here's how it could work. So I just wanted to add that in there. Voice of experience.
All right, thank you so much. While we're at it, is there any public comment?
I don't think so.
Seeing none, moving back. Is there anything specific you want as far as feedback, Jenna? I don't know if this has been sufficiently useful or if we're just, meandering around we were hoping for.
No, this is useful. I would say, I guess I just want to gauge how big you would want a pilot program to be, which I know what our budget situation is like. And I think that 20 trees would be a great amount to start with. If you agree with that, I can start putting together a budget.
So I'm not certain if we're really in a position here to make the budget
We're not
decision
ready
like
for
that.
Here yet.
I also will say that when we've talked about the cost of trees before, there was that like Arrested Development banana, sorry, not banana, maybe it was banana moment where I was like, I mean, how much does the tree cost? Is it like thousands of dollars, tens of thousands of dollars? And there was some number, I don't remember what it was, but that was much lower than I thought it was going to be.
Maybe Ken knows how much is a tree?
Well, yes, normally you're going to be planting a 15-gallon size tree. You can plant larger sizes, but I would suggest a 15-gallon tree, which normally runs between, you can get some wholesale as low as $75, but usually you're running anywhere from $100 to $125 per tree. That is the cost of the tree. It does not include other materials such as stakes, gopher baskets if you need them, any fertilizer and whatnot. So I would figure maybe $150 for a tree.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm hoping that whoever allocates the budget allocates a bunch of trees.
Yeah, well, we'll bring it to the board and we'll say,
Yeah.
Could we have this much for the pilot?
Okay.
Cool. Well, I think we're good then. Thank you, Jenna. We'll come back next time with more final document. Thank you, Ken. Good to
Thank
see
you, everyone.
Moving on to agenda 3.2, jury duty policy. The committee will have a discussion on updates to the district's jury duty policy and give direction to staff.
Okay, let me share my screen on this one. So this came out of recent discussions at the board level that we need to, I got my contract updated on jury duty. And so we said, let's look at the employees policy for jury duty as well, because it was pretty old and not very updated. So essentially what this policy does, and this was based on so what this policy does is 10 working days of jury duty, 80 hours. As you guys might know, jury duty is not all day, so it might be like 4 hours. And then you can do 4 hours PTO off jury duty pay and 4 hours back to work. But it would provide this, 80 hours, 10 working days equivalent to people to have paid time on a jury, and then otherwise they could, use their other PTO to continue on their jury summons. So this is up to you all. Like a lot of the text is now like process based. Maybe the policy decision is what's the amount of days we want to provide people or hours to be on a jury. Some public agencies in town do unlimited, all of it. And that's like one end, some do none. And so we can pick in that spectrum where we want to be.
This is a really pedantic thing.
Is
that with?
It's supposed to be a with, yeah.
It's supposed to be, what is it?
Maybe
that sentence was crossed off except for the word with.
Yeah,
okay, all right.
It's
okay.
just
kind of situation where I kind of feel like there should be some like higher level. clearly you get this high enough level, and there should be just some kind of like, government mechanism that allows, to pay people to be on the jury duty. Jury for to do this stuff. So I was going to say, like, they wish our insurance carrier should just maybe like a bunch of governments should get together and we should all like agree to like, cross pay against things. It's like, it's like the chance that like, one of the districts is going to have somebody who ends up on a long jury duty. It's like, over the course of years, like, that district, got the short straw, and so everyone should, but like, it's, it's kind of sad that we don't have such a process, because I would like people to just say unlimited, like, why not?
With a bunch of governments, we can get together with them and
make
their own insurance pool.
Maybe if we have their copious free time on all of our staff to work on coordinating and the intergovernmental process for that, because I would like people to just say unlimited, because it just feels really warm and fuzzy and like how the world should work. But
I'll share like jury lengths. Like I was almost selected to be on one that was going to be maybe 5 weeks long, but not 80 hours. I mean, it would have been like 2 days of the week or 3 days of the week, and then for like 6 hours of those days. So it's not like you're working at the jury 9 to 5 like at work. But I know, Ethan, he was on a jury for 8 months or more, like a year almost, and a lot of time. So those happen for sure. Some were 1 day too. So
is there?
This is what I have, by the way, the 10 days or the 80 hours. That's what's in my contract. So.
In your contract, okay. And when we did that in your contract, was that like, because the question I was going to ask that maybe I've asked before, for all I know, and this is where this caused on the previous contract, is there some kind of like reasonable standard that other governments have? Is there any kind of like, okay?
Yeah, like
does there need to be a sentence that says like that this 10 days or 80 hours replenishes, or like say if an employee had to use 4 of these days 1 year, and then the next year they get called again, and then they have to use 1 day, like do they replenish up to 10 at a certain new year point? Or
that's a good question. I mean, consistent with like the bereavement leave policy, it's per instance of a death in the family, you get your bereavement leave. So I would assume it's per jury summons. So maybe we should write that in.
That actually be really helpful,
because you might get federal jury summons, which I know about, and state jury summons. So I don't know. Those are two separate things.
In the same year even. I feel like it would be helpful for employees to have like a sentence in here, and for future managers for there to be a sentence that says like per instance or per summons.
Per summons makes sense to me. It's easy to track. Those, and if you get the summons, you're not going to get jury duty for another year minimum, if not longer. But so if you do use your 80 hours this year, for a fact, not until next September will I have to use it again. Or we know too, budget-wise, you won't have to spend that again.
Of the same court, but I thought
I got 2 at the same time.
You got 2 different courts, so 2 different levels of court requested you in the same calendar year. And so I would hate for lightning to strike twice for a CSD employee. A different CSD employee doesn't strike twice for you, but like but also that's my first.
Rare. I think it's such a rare thing to happen. So you could put that in as a benefit, and no one will maybe ever use
no one have to use that. At a per summons request. I would feel more comfortable with that. The other question I had is like, have we seen, maybe you haven't got to do this research, but if there's difference between like all employees versus say like part-time employees, or different like distinctions like that between like hourly expectations.
I think this is one of our policy decisions. That's what Jamie put in here, is like we should clarify for exempt, salary, non-exempt, or hourly as well.
Can you explain the difference between like exempt and salaried?
Exempt and salaried is, we get paid a salary. We don't have to work any number of hours. Usually we do on the more side. But the hourly then are the people who have to work 40 hours a week, or if they work more than 8 hours a day, they get overtime.
Exactly.
So our project managers and our interns are non-exempt hourly, and then our managers are salaried exempt.
Okay, so salaried and exempt is one bucket, and non-exempt is the other bucket.
Yeah, and they're
Okay.
hourly. Yeah, you can't be exempt and hourly.
Okay,
Yeah.
I never knew what that meant, so I learned something huge today.
You're exempt from the California, I forget the name of the law, but that's what you're exempt from.
Got
You're
it.
exempt from the overtime protections and all that.
Got it. Okay.
So yeah, do you want to provide this to the interns or not, or full-time versus part-time?
For me, my leaning would be towards the 80 hours or 10 working days be reserved for folks who are working full-time. So whether they're salaried or not salaried, but folks that we are expecting to do 40 hours of work per week. Yeah, 40 hours of work per week. And then folks that we're expecting less than that, then I would want to think of a different number, but splitting it in half again, like.
Would you just prorate it? That's kind of how we do our sick time prorated and vacation time prorated, but then the interns, they have a whole other scheme for their sick time. It's a whole separate accrual rate and all that.
So say like an intern versus like is not the same as our, like, say a dirt rider employee in the past.
They're
Okay,
the same.
they're the same.
Yeah,
Okay.
same kind of.
So when you say intern, you mean a part-time employee of ours?
Temporary employee.
Okay, temporary, got it. That's the direction where I'm thinking is most natural to tier and have in another like sub-paragraph of this policy. I don't know how other policy directors are feeling.
We can
Is
ask
the-
Jamie to work out the language.
Your tieredness of it, are you, is it mentally different than, or at least is it drastically mentally different than the pro rata option?
I don't think so yet. I'd have to like visualize them in my head a little bit just to remember.
Looks like you're a part-time, you get 40 hours, essentially.
Yeah,
Part-time
it's
for-
Well, if
not
you're half,
Half-time,
Yeah.
yeah, sorry.
it's not different from that pro rata version. For
Okay.
me, that's not where my inkling is towards.
Okay. That makes sense to me for what it's worth. Like the thing that if we believe that the 10 and 80 are correct numbers, I think it makes sense to prorate it based upon the amount of full-timedness that you are working. If we thought that the 10 and 80 were particularly generous numbers, it becomes a little more complicated, but I don't know if we are trying to be pretty generous with it. So
I mean, it's a little more complicated, but the math is still the same at the end of the day, right? If it's 60, you get 30. So, yeah.
I guess
Prorate.
my thought is that this number is generous in a way that is beneficial, but I feel like it would be incredibly hard for anyone to take advantage of it because it's like based on these like legal requests, like a legal summons, subpoena, or court order.
the little game theory thing in my head actually isn't concerned about the employees taking advantage of it. It's concerned about other employers in the area taking advantage of us via some weird way. But I agree though. It's like
So-
this weird corner case. I just
I don't know if they
So,
could
yeah.
take advantage of us, but like I do know, like for example, an employee at City College. I mean, he was like, I'm paid, 24/7 to be here essentially. Like, he had no qualms, I guess, no financial hardship. That's one thing you can argue to the court, like I have a financial hardship, but for him, the court was happy, I guess. The court will like us maybe for this because it takes away an excuse from people
that's interesting. Yeah.
who are trying to get out of jury duty for them to be able to say, oh, my work won't pay for me. A lot of people say that as their excuse, but our work does pay, at least for some of it. And you do know the calendar of the court case. I guess it's good I went through all this, but you get the whole calendar of everything you're expected to do before you make your excuse. So
Got it.
And you cannot technically lie when you're speaking up there. So if you have a 10-day case, let's say, and you're going to say, oh, this would be financially hard on me, that would be a lie under oath. So I guess the court would appreciate this.
For our most full-time employees, what is the number of total working days they have per year?
That's a great question. I don't know the math on that, but they work, 5 days a week, minus the 16 vacation days that we have. So, and then the winter recess for 5 5-ish days, depending on the year if we get it.
Holidays.
Yeah, let's go.
Okay, so we're looking at approximately like a 4 to 5% potential impact on our of a single person's, whoever the most expensive employee might be,
Yeah.
budget is, if we decide to go with this, and until we then freak out and decide whenever that happens that this will never happen again, we change the policy. So I'm okay with going with the and basically, and then it makes it the same as the contract you already have.
Yeah.
It makes everyone feel fair on the whole thing.
That's true.
I like the pro rata thing, and then because that also makes everything feel fair, that no one has to feel like anyone's getting the short stick.
That's true.
So
That's true.
you know,
So yeah, we can ask Jamie to make these
Yeah.
edits or clarifications on the per rata, per
Mhm.
summons,
Per
and
summons.
there was a third one.
Just like yes, 80 hours is for full-time,
Yeah,
Yeah, I think those are the
and
only.
then sub-paragraph on prorated for
Yeah.
temp. And per summons, sounds good.
okay.
okay. Or does Olivia want to say anything and haven't been paying enough attention to her because
That's okay. Yeah, this all sounds great. I agree that the 80 hours should be reserved for full-time employees and it should be scaled from there. That sounds good to me.
okay, I mean public comment on this motion or not motion on this agenda item.
I don't see any.
Okay. Sounds like you got the
Yeah.
right.
Good to go.
Okay. Moving on to the bereavement policy. The committee will have a discussion on updates to the district's bereavement policy and give directions to staff.
This one is a more simple one. We're just clarifying things, not changing the benefit. So the benefit was also, there was always 5 days, 40 hours. I mean, we do a lot of our benefits on an hourly basis, not day basis. It was good to know both. So this is just making some clarifications. Jamie added in this paragraph on documentation for verifying your leave. So that's new, but otherwise mostly the same.
Published obituary.
I guess, it sounds weird, but I guess better to have options than less. That someone's comfortable submitting. Anything on this one?
Question.
Yeah.
It says that you can use any accrued vacation time, so you couldn't use sick time for bereavement leave.
Where does it say?
On the last bullet, it says, like, you can either request additional unpaid leave or may request the opportunity to use any accrued vacation time
Oh,
at the discretion of the general manager.
that makes sense. Yeah, I mean, I would make sense to me to make it sick time as well, like whatever PTO.
Like
they
whatever you
wanna
have
use.
available, essentially, because if somebody doesn't,
You can always take a vacation. Like, why would you need to get your manager's approval to use vacation time? It seems like that
Sure.
would probably, yeah, I agree. The sick
Yeah.
time makes more sense than that.
yeah, I guess you could put both as an option, so people have,
Well, I just don't think you need, like, for vacation, you don't, like, why would the general manager be like, you've got accrued vacation time, but I'm not gonna let you use it. It's like, what if my vacation is to do this? Like, like vacation
I
time,
see
that
what
you
you're
can't
saying.
stop the vacation time, but the sick time, yeah.
Yeah,
see.
I mean, we do have the rule that like vacation time, if you want to do more than 3 days in a row. You can.
Oh, yeah, okay.
But
I
you
had
could
forgotten
do 3
about-
days
all right.
without approval.
Okay.
You could do 3 days without approval.
Okay, it just seemed so strange to me that it was like, holy yeah. So,
I mean, we can just make it like may request to use accrued paid time.
I was thinking that too.
Well, we don't use that term, but vacation or sick time, like we can just say or.
Yeah, I'm comfortable with the or there.
I can ask Jamie just to be sure about vacation or sick time.
Yeah, and this is old text, so we didn't
But yeah,
figure that out or think of that back then when we originally put that sentence in.
am I reading this diff correctly, that the primary reason why we need to do this is that we simply said that you had paid leave of 40 hours for each death, and we were like, you must take 40 hours before? We didn't mean to say.
I think this is just, I think what happened was my contract was more vague on this.
Okay.
And it spurred, like, do we need to update this one too? So
Yeah, but like
my-
I could see a reasonable reading of it. It would be like up to 40 hours, but no. We were like, can you just get 40 hours?
It says maximum, huh? Isn't that the same?
No, well, that's that we're adding that text today. That's
Oh,
purple.
yes, yeah.
Yeah, it used to just say you may have a paid leave of 40 hours for each death.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, which, I'd assume people would want to take their maximum.
Yeah, I was about to say though, but then why would they not take the maximum
Yeah.
if it, given this? And so why do we have maximum of?
Well, okay, I guess.
Well, I don't think this says that they have to take
For free.
that number. It just says that is the
May.
maximum of like basic bereavement leave. And then if the employer requires more, then they may request more
They can, yeah, from their other pools.
from their other pools.
But I mean, I see both of what you guys are saying. Like it says may, but it also says a maximum of, and it didn't use to say maximum of. And so you may have paid leave of 40 hours. So
I think maybe
before.
what I'm thinking, maybe Jay is thinking the same thing, is that my question is this first maximum of this first bullet point a separate pool that is not in their accrued times?
It is a separate amount of money.
Got it.
Yeah, yeah. We
I-
don't bank this money or anything. 'Cause
Yeah.
we don't plan for this. But
So somehow like the maximum of wording to me makes it sound like we are kind of requesting you to be like, do you really need that much time to bereave your
Yeah,
your-
yeah,
your-
I
and
mean,
it's
we
just
can
like,
remove
please,
that.
can you cap it to the amount that you need actually feel like you needed? Whereas when before with the maximum of wording was just like, look, yeah, we get it.
for it. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, let's just do that. If it affects morale in any way, if someone reading it, I think it's fine to remove. This is just the edits Jamie suggested, but it's our policy.
So may have a paid leave of 40 hours
Yeah,
or for 5 working days.
Yeah.
cool.
Sounds good.
Well, we can take this then. It's not a lot of updates then for this one, just the documentation really then. I think more that it was my contract that didn't have this wording, and so my contract got adjusted to this one. So that's why maybe this was on the list to look at again.
Okay, want to make certain explicitly, Olivia?
Sounds good to me.
Okay, and is there any public comment on this?
Mhm.
Do we feel like you have sufficient?
Mhm.
Great,
Perfect. Yeah, we'll
okay.
good to go. We'll have these both for the board meeting on Tuesday.
All right, moving on to the 3.4 employee missed shifts and scheduling policy. The committee will have a discussion on employee missed shifts and scheduling and give direction to its staff.
Okay, so I know this is from like blast from the past, not really, but March was the last time we looked at this, but we have a draft now. This is not for moving to the board on Tuesday, so it's still in draft form. So the goal of this policy is, we have so many different hourly employees, and we want to be able to have something in our policy to be able to manage scheduled shifts and making your shift essentially. Right now, our policy is silent on this issue completely. So while we can enforce it still because it's an expectation of work, it's good for the employees and for the employer to have it like clear written that here's the rules on shifts and missing them in attendance, etc. So we want to have a unified policy for the district that makes it easy to follow. So that's the goal here. And we have had some programs have some issues with shifts. It hasn't been, I wouldn't call it like rampant at all. It's not been like an issue for all over the district, but we've had the issues come up enough for us to say, let's put this in writing. Go ahead. Yeah.
Are all of our employees shifted employees? Or like in the mental model that you have of this,
Yeah.
would this apply to all work done by everybody, or only to people who, for example, are manning a phone or tilling compost or?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. We have both. Like people have a set schedule. Like some jobs always happen, 1 to 3 on Tuesday or something like that. Some jobs you sign up for your shift, but once you've signed up for it, we need it to be done that day. Like the compost, a lot of it is time sensitive. The ID Beautiful stuff, some of it is time sensitive, like glass on the floor that gets reported or graffiti people want removed. So it's mixed. The staff is, the community center, when we did have interns there, they would get scheduled to an event, for example. So some work is shift based, some is scheduled in advance for specific activity, and some is as you go, you can sign up for work. it's a mix, and one of the paragraphs in here does go the shift schedules. It does, that's like the attempt is to make it broad enough that shifts they vary, and you sign up for a shift. If you sign up for one though, it's like being assigned to it by your manager. Once you've signed up for an open shift, it's like having been assigned one. Because like I said, it's both. You might say, oh, you need you here 3 to 5 on Thursday, versus you signed up to be there 3 to 5 on Thursday. Either way, we need to depend on someone to be there 3 to 5 on Thursday.
Okay. So this does, though, like, if I understand what you're saying correctly, like not all the work that the district is doing is currently being assigned in shifts. There are some things that we do that are assigned in shifts, and a lot of things are not.
Yeah.
Okay.
I wouldn't say a lot, I couldn't say what the mix is, but yeah.
I don't mean to say a majority of it is.
It's a
non-negligible amount of it is not.
Yes, it's a good mix. It's a even mix
Okay.
of some kind. So yeah, a lot of this was based on the discussion that we had in the policy committee back in March, and we tried to make sure like all the staff we spoke at that time and the board discussion we had, this part here, the quarterly evaluation, like we'll be looking at this on a regular basis to make sure if we like this policy or not, if it even works for us. And that was, I think, something Olivia you had brought up in the last meeting, was like, how could we don't want to be too rigid, I guess, in doing something like this. And so this gives us some flexibility that we don't have to stick to this 100%. We can reevaluate and come back and make edits if it's not working for us. Because I don't want to say it's new, but it is new to have the rules and everything laid out. So yeah, do you guys have any general thoughts or specific thoughts, or does this generally meet the policy goals? Is there anything off target? Is there a sentence that not super clear?
I mean, I had a comma here: employees who are ill, comma, or for personal or other reasons, comma, cannot report to their assigned shift.
And this is definitely draft number 1 we got today, so we got finished today, so we will definitely comb through it on that kind of stuff too.
Do we have elsewhere in our employee manual or employee policy handbook a number of unexcused absences?
That's a good question. So it's kind of in 2 places. The main, this kind of starts getting at the unexcused absence right here, but the main section we have, let me just grab it for you. It's leave of absence. So unauthorized leave. If you're absent from work for more than 3 days without any notice or anything, it's pretty much grounds for being fired.
Got it. Okay. And so then in this one that we're working on right now, it has this other sentence that says employees who fail to report for 3 consecutive shifts, which I feel like covers the gap between, like, say, like a partial time employee who could do a similar, like, missing.
Yeah, because I guess this 3 calendar days, it doesn't say consecutive, but it is more targeted towards the full-time employees. But yeah, this is now doing 3 shifts. So technically someone can have 2 shifts in one day. It's not super common, but if you had a shift Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and you miss all 3, that would trigger this.
Got it.
I don't think we've ever had this happen before at that level. So, again, one of those ones you never want to use. But
does the other area you just highlighted in the other part of the policy have the sentence voluntarily resigned? Like, are those, because I think the other one says, like, maybe.
Yes, it does.
Okay.
This is the unauthorized leave policy, or the general leave of absence.
But it's the unauthorized portion.
Yeah, because you can technically, so we do have a benefit here where you can have a leave of absence from the district unpaid.
Yes.
I guess it's a sabbatical of some kind.
Let's go down just a little bit.
Yeah.
Say stuff.
Yeah, I was just showing this other part, like, there's other kinds of leave.
Yeah,
but then
you
the
can-
unauthorized leave is the,
The unauthorized is like you do zero communication about your leave.
You just
You
disappear.
just disappear. Yeah.
I mean, and since everybody gets the policy
Okay.
handbook and signs it and say they read it, that's why this is written this way. Like, if you disappear for 3 days, we think you quit, essentially.
Okay.
Like, you've terminated the employee.
Okay, so this text on this policy fixes an issue that I was gonna ask about in the other one.
Yeah.
But also then causes other weirdness. So, okay, so in the text we're looking at today,
Yeah.
it says that if you miss 3 shifts in a row, then you are considered to have resigned. Period. So you made a comment a couple paragraphs of you talking ago that was like, we wouldn't, this might get used. Well, no, it happened. Like they have resigned.
Yeah.
Like, it's not like the general manager can choose to terminate you at that point. It's that, no, they're
We've
gone.
assumed
And like,
you've resigned,
you show up then a little bit later and we're like, oh, okay, that makes sense. You were in a coma, whatever. We have to hire you again. And so I don't know if the intention, because this one says that you may be terminated at the discretion of the general manager.
Or it says later that you've resigned to the third.
Well, but so that's where I'm actually,
Kind of, yeah, it is.
but it says an employee terminating employment of this man. So this verb, right, does indicate that the employee is the person taking the action.
Yeah.
But at the same time, this paragraph says that the termination is actually something that happens by the general manager
This is
taking
part of the
action.
cleanup we need
So
to
I was
do.
then
Yeah.
wondering if it was really more like an employee whose employment was terminated in the manner described in this section
No.
will be considered to have voluntarily resigned.
Well, I guess, do you guys have a preference on which way we start solidifying this, since we are making these revisions? Like, do we want to keep in this direction of you don't show up for 3 times, we consider you quit? Or do we want to go what this other bullet point says, and it's like you have to go through the termination process? Because, this is an old policy, another one of the old ones that we'll need to update. This is not a good flag that we have a contradiction within the policy almost.
I'm going to say honestly, I've had sufficient privilege in my life that I've never worked a shifted job.
Yeah.
So I don't really know what this is like to experience this sort of thing. So I feel a little bit awkward providing too much, like it's like, miss 3 shifts. Clearly,
I guess the 3 was just, it's consistent with the 3 days, but yeah, it doesn't have to be 3. It doesn't have to be automatically resigned. It could be, the process begins to let someone go. So
When I think about like my time managing part-time student employees and the way this would apply to that person in our organization, like if you miss 3 consecutive shifts, that could possibly be like you said, Monday, Thursday, and then Saturday. Like once you're supervising that person, they don't show up for the Monday for this like shift kind of schedule. You're checking in just by like, that's like your responsibility as their manager in a certain way. And then definitely the second time if it's not the first time. So it's hard for me to imagine like like a person slipping through the cracks of their own mistake and a manager not reaching them somehow. So it's hard for me to imagine it not being like a willful, don't care about this job choice by a partial time employee. When I think of like a full-time employee, like any kind of program manager level, like it seems equally as willful because you've like signed a more serious contract, you've gone through a more serious hiring process. Like I'm sure like our part-time employees are having like onboarding very seriously, like where they're not reading every sentence of the policy manual with their manager, but their manager is telling them, here are a few things that I'm going to be like paying attention to for your job. It's hard for me to think that the way it's written right now is unfair for an employee.
Because it's without notifying anybody.
It's without notifying anyone.
Going silent.
And so like, I'm assuming a part-time employee, if they miss one of their shifts and their next one is like in 4 days, if you don't show up, like your boss is probably going to send you a message somehow.
So I'm actually now really curious how this is going to happen. Because like, okay, so you missed the first 2 shifts. The manager has not heard from you. Kind of like, like be awkward, I guess, if like, I guess technically they could be like talking to you and you just refuse to answer any questions about the missed shifts, but you're only willing to answer questions about other things. It's just like, but then the manager chooses in some sense on their end willfully to maintain your shift status on the third one without having heard an explanation of the first two. Like that, it's like, hey, you've missed the last two. You haven't provided any explanation for that. You are shifted for here. I could try to get somebody else to do that shift, but no. I believe in them. I think that they're going to show up at that point. The manager, would they do that?
Well, it's not quite, I mean,
Okay.
look, you would try to get the shift filled because the work needs to be done.
Yeah.
And that person is still not showing up to their shift without letting them know, like, I'm sick. Like all they need to say is, I'm sick, I can't come to work.
Okay, so the manager switching the shift would not make it not considered.
Yeah, it wouldn't like exempt this person.
Okay,
from the policy,
then
right?
I didn't know
Because
it, yeah.
they still aren't showing up. Like we're
they're
still
still
getting
not
the work done.
communicating.
Yeah, they're still
Yeah,
not
okay,
communicating. Because all you need to do is just notify, right? You just need to.
Yeah, my mental model was like, it's like when your shift
Right.
begins, you are not there and you did not,
Yeah.
well, it's like, but if your shift never began because I kept unshifting
It
you,
never
then like it
happened,
would
but
never,
there you
yeah.
go.
So,
Yeah, I think it still would count as them
Okay.
not reporting to work.
So far, these are all responsibilities that like I held of my part-time student employees in this window of time. This was like 2016 era. And I feel like now, like our least experienced like part-time employees would probably feel just as comfortable as those folks did, like reaching out to their manager via phone or email or text or anything to notify and give an excuse about punctuality and attendance. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel very comfortable with this. I don't think that it's like falling on the side of too stringent at all, just because I agree with Marcos of like at this point, if there was no communication, like after one shift, I agree somebody reaches out, but if there's no communication after 3 consecutive missed shifts, like that's intentional on the part of the employee. And so I do feel like it's fair to just like, you know, have assumed they have resigned at that point.
I am wondering almost on the other text more than this text, whether or not if the general manager making the decision to decide to terminate based upon the lack thing, whether that's like has some kind of weird, because like it's like we're making the determination that you're taking an action is them having decided to voluntarily resign, and there's something.
I think we'll just put this on the list to bring back next
Okay.
month.
Mhm.
This is what we need to do this fall anyways, is clean these up. Because me, you and Natalie and Ethan got these done a long time ago and we didn't, I mean, I at least did not know as much. We didn't have staff yet, so.
Yeah, this
That's
page,
great, by the way.
this page that we're not like agendized for today, I think is important for
Oh, good point. Good call.
is important for future meetings for specifically like whether or not it'll trigger unemployment and protecting us from those costs.
That's a good point.
Because if one is like you are terminated by the general manager or by a manager, that could
You get better.
Yeah, that's why I figured the reason why we have all of these things that are saying like you just been deemed that you have resigned. It's like a so we don't have to pay any benefits.
Well, I don't know if we thought of that, but whoever this template came from probably did.
Well, but yeah, we do have to clean this template to make that way. There's no ambiguity for that
Yeah.
situation.
So otherwise, I would have kind of expected to be like would be deemed as sufficient reason for termination for cause or something.
Yeah, I mean, that's what the first bullet says. Kind of. It doesn't say.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, kind of, yeah.
Yeah, we have
Then
a
it's just like,
contradiction
yeah.
within the policy, so. All right. I think
Okay,
we're
is there
good
any
on this one.
public comment on this? Okay, and going back to the agenda, we've got 3.5 community spaces insurance requirements. The committee will have a discussion on special event insurance requirements for the community center and community room, and give direction to staff.
Maya wanted to be here for this one, but she's doing something I think also as important, which is running the first info session on our other new policies.
Oh, yeah,
so
those are
that was another thing we needed to do, is educate people on the other new policies. So, but she did prepare this for us today. So this chart right here, you might remember it, is from 2021. That's the current policy that we have in terms of insurance requirements. Like, we only require insurance in 2 cases, which is the high intensity events, and we had a separate definition, an older definition for what those are. Back in the day, it was essentially like certain kind of activities, like a concert and over 100 people was how we defined high. But we don't really use this anymore. We've moved on from our interim policies, and we have now put in place all these other kinds of policies on governing the uses of the space. So one of the things from the old days that we need to update to the new days is what the insurance rules are. And sorry, it was 50 days. Maya beat me. She had the note right there about the old definitions were. But essentially, just to also give you a refresher, so this is a complicated one, this insurance stuff. But the way it works mechanically, I guess, is we require insurance and we don't require insurance. When we don't require it, it just essentially means we're taking on all the risk. Like, if anything happens at that event, someone trips and falls, right? That's a common example. We have to deal with that with our insurance company and getting the claim settled, etc. But for the higher intensity ones, we're saying we're requiring them to carry insurance. So then if something happens at their event, like at their concert, someone gets, pushed and falls, then the insurance claim would, go against the host at that point. And so right now we have taken on a huge amount of, I don't want to say a huge amount of risk, because I don't want to give it a quality or not, but it's like we've taken on a risk for most of the events that happen at the center, including the private ones and the public ones, open and closed, right? That's how we have described it. So one thing else that Maya has been working on that I know has come up at the board meetings is, if we are requiring insurance, is it going to be easy for people to get insurance? Because it is really complicated to get insurance. So it's been extremely complex, and there's 100 million policies in our insurance pool that we can use, but there is a way, pretty straightforward, if we distill it and manage it, for us to sell insurance essentially to our users at an affordable rate that's per event basis. So we can do that, but it would be way too hard to get into with you all the different insurance options, because there's almost an unlimited amount of them. I can bring up some of the ones we've distilled at this point. And by the way, this is the guide. That's the policy we passed. It's the fun guide that explains it. But we do have a lot of different insurance options. So I don't think we can get into the insurance plans and how much coverage and the complexities, but you can see that it can get extremely detailed on, this chart is from the company, number of people, hazard levels. It's similar to what we do, right? It's we were on the right track when we came up with our scheme, but theirs can just be very, very detailed. So it's more for us, what the decision for us to make before we get into plans and coverage levels. We even want to get to that. It's more of what are the risks we want to take on, or what's the threshold from where we cover it versus where we expect the other person to cover it. Because I think that's what you guys have discussed in the past before, is we want to cover events and make it easy to have events, and that's not what happens in other places. And so it makes it so that we have all these events by not having as much red tape. So, but where's the line? Where's the line where we start saying, okay, we can't cover this completely as IVCSD? It would be too much on the public money that we govern. And Maya's come up with a few different, factors that we would consider. We can use all 4 or 1. It's up to us what we draw as the line. So the number of people coming to the event. Right now, we do say 50 is one of the thresholds you got to cross. It's the main threshold right now. It's 50 people in your event. you have to get insurance. And, we've talked about how you can game that system potentially by saying, oh, it's only going to be 20 people here. The type of events. So you can say like the category the event's in, like, is it a concert, festival? Is it public? Is it private? Closed, open. So that's another metric. The things they're going to be doing at the event, which is kind of different than the event itself, because you can have like a concert without live performance. Maybe you can have an iPod, or you can have it with live performance. That's maybe a bad example, but I think you get what I'm saying is the event doesn't necessarily say all the activities are going to happen in it. So these are the different kinds of activities involved. So cooking or alcohol, performers. And then there's also the space. Like, do we want to maybe say the room is, pretty low risk and we will insure the room, but the center at a certain level needs to get insured? That's another way to think of it. So we don't have to have a decision today. I think we just want to start the conversation of like, what is that line potentially, or like what's the ballpark of the line? We can start narrowing in on it more, and Mike can do more research based on the preferences. But I think that's what we're trying to get to today is where's the line? Right now the line's 50 people. How we pretty much set it.
Yeah.
So I saw those sample questions, they're really useful. And then above is section C, which is like, those questions were a little bit more wider scope for me.
What's
Alcohol.
Oh,
and I felt my more natural comfort was in this like wider scope, like alcohol or not alcohol. Yeah. And then public or private. The details of like, say, the difference between like sports or a barbecue / cooking in general, like those ones feel harder for me to make a call when I think about like our policy. But when we briefly looked at the Canva and we saw like, I saw the middle quotient had like their middle hazard range, like mentions with alcohol. And it's like,
this is how the insurance company thinks of it.
Yeah. And that taking your like level 1 attendance costs up $40 to $50, for me feels like it feels fair when I think about the scope of a budget of like, I'm having an event that's going to have alcohol. Like I'm clearly I'm having a real event. Right. I want fun to be had or whatever. I feel like that amount of that insurance cost feels natural in that budget for us to put the burden onto like the public, the person making the request. That's my leaning.
Yeah, and just to clarify on the C right now, and I get why these are maybe the better questions to ask, but C is saying that right now we are requiring insurance even if they have alcohol or no alcohol. Like if it's a 50-person event with no alcohol, we are requiring insurance. And if it's a 51-person event with alcohol, we're requiring the same insurance. So right now our policy doesn't care if you have alcohol or not alcohol. It's just 50. Like that's why it says it does not matter, does not matter, does not matter.
Oh, does not matter.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you could interpret it as like, should it matter if, and that's essentially what we're asking kind of here, like, should it matter if public or private? But right now, it doesn't matter. Like a 50-person event needs insurance, no matter any other factors to it.
I can tell you what I would, the way I would like it to work.
Yeah, oh, that's perfect.
And which is kind of like, feels unrelated to where we currently are almost,
okay.
Which is that if I want to have an event here, however large the event is, whatever the like alcohol, etc. is, we have policies for how much I might have to pay to use the space.
Right.
And I don't have to think about insurance. There might be fine print which says that if I have an insurance policy which would cover this yada yada yada, and that would apply to you, then I can request a discount from staff and we can negotiate how much that discount might be. But the default would be that I pay money with there is insurance.
Yeah.
It's just that like
requirement of them.
Yeah, there's just no like it's just like there's a cost to use the space, and we've figured out how we make the space feel like safe and insured. And if we think that requires an insurance policy for certain things, we roll that into the cost of the space so that you're paying us to get whatever kind of insurance. But now there's some mental confusion that I have when I look at that other chart. And I'm like,
original one, or
no, I'm sorry, the
new
other
one?
page that you had.
Oh yeah, this is
yeah,
from
this.
the-
I'm like, I look at this, and then I'm like, okay, so, but are we like the insurance companies, like for our events, like for the events we already have, we have like a
General,
this meeting right now, like this is a meeting,
Is
right? That is
insured.
like this is an indoor meeting that is 1 to 100 people. They're not charging us $87 today.
No.
We've got some policy that covers, yeah.
We pay 50,000 a year.
Yeah, and so like it also feels to me like there's just something weird going on where it's like if we allocate the like this kind of cost for every individual event, whatever size, whatever thing, it just feels like we're burning the community's money into overhead with the insurance company that really should be our job to figure out how to get the right kind of blanket insurance policy so that we can like cover everything, and then we charge people as part of using the space to cover the cost of our insurance policy.
Yeah.
And that's like more efficient for everybody. So
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with that. I think we need to relook at our fees in a year to meet that, because we did the fees based on the janitorial cost. But we also think that we're already getting so many people paying right now that we might exceed our goal. I don't want to speak too soon. It's been a week, but we've gotten a lot of paid, events already, and we could then re-look at that and say, oh, the fees actually are for the insurance policy.
yeah, but at bare minimum, if right now we are requiring, if you have an event that is over 50, we are charging you on this rubric.
No,
we're charging
not
the insurance.
technically.
We're requiring you to pay the insurance
Something
company
like
on
this.
something similar to this
I mean, that's
rubric.
what our current policy does say.
Then, like in
a couple
some
years
sense,
ago.
it just does. It feels like we're not increasing the cost burden to anyone if we're able to, because if we're able to just say like, oh, you pay us instead of the insurance company, and then maybe it should be less than that because we get a more effective, more efficient thing rather than having to piecemeal individual policies. But like it kind of just like irks me, the idea that like even like the $87 for this that like was ostensibly for this meeting, that partly that would end up occurring because there would have to be an insurance person who would talk to somebody to one-off draft the thing that we were going to be doing for this thing. And like the cost is just, if we could just blanket it, it would just be so much less for everybody and so much less mental overhead and like fewer questions, because it's just the one question about the fee schedule, which is complicated, yes, but like it's like that the complication gets like isolated to the amount you're paying for the
That makes sense to me. Yeah.
It also, in some sense, for good or for not, causes this thing where if we have certain kinds of events that we want to we want to incentivize occurring versus other ones in the same way we were talking about in the fee schedule policy, that like we're choosing not to charge these people, even though yes, we have janitorial costs for those people, because in some sense that whether it be the district is subsidizing or the other events you could argue are subsidizing, and it's that all gets kind of wrapped up in the same thing where the insurance is like everyone's insured. We don't have to worry about it. Everyone's insured, but like it's about who's the kinds of events that we're trying to get to have happen and all sorts of stuff, and all gets rolled up into the one payment.
One cost.
Yeah.
I'll just say, Jay, that was really helpful to hear. Like it reminds me of what Ken said earlier, which was think about how like your users will interact with the policy, and your questions and your comments like help me come to that point, which is like this will keep us at a high usage rate of our spaces if we take away that burden of like, oh, by the way, you have to get insurance for your new cooler event that'll be a little bit larger now on your own, versus if we've done it blanket and then we tell them, if you're doing this, then like or if you have some way to insure yourself, then you can subsidize your like event fee.
Because just to go back to that, so you were saying if you have insurance, you could appeal to not
Potentially, we don't necessarily,
Maybe in the future,
have to
yeah.
have that clause. I was just
Yeah.
thinking like maybe
That's the
we
idea.
get
That
some
was
kind
the
of
idea.
complaint that like the church is like, look, we do events all the time. We have insurance. Our insurance, honestly, is maybe even better than your insurance. You should be okay with us not paying this extra fee. And we're like, yeah, okay, sure.
Well, that's an interesting thing to look at. Is like how we would make it work if they wanted to bring in their own and any benefit they get. Like, maybe they can 50% off or something like that.
Yeah.
Okay, well, this is, it's easier for us it is appreciate less paperwork on the staff side, and they still will need to sign a liability and indemnity waiver. So they will indemnify the district on anything if they rent the space. So we'll figure out how to bring this back to the board for approval the best way. I guess we haven't officially deleted the old policies yet. So maybe it's just part of coming to you all and saying, here's the deletion of all the old ones, and with it, the insurance requirement goes. But I guess that is something we need to do that I haven't remembered to do, is that we're adding the new ones, but we haven't necessarily deleted the old ones.
And so this particular policy right here is still in like the brainstorm space of like, it's not gonna come to a full board.
We potentially could bring it to the board on Tuesday, especially since if what we're technically doing is just deleting old stuff. But I might say like it's only 3 days from now, and let's just do it in the October meeting. Might be easier to just bring something clean and finished to you all. So
The only reason why I'm thinking also is just like how we are rolling out to the public our new kind of fee schedule, and how this could be like another change in the middle of us doing the rollout of information.
It's a change, but in their benefits. So you can say like, we're adding the fees, like, but we're taking away this requirement.
Yes.
And so,
Which cost you money
Which
based on a
you
schedule that looks
were-
similar
yeah,
to this.
we're- you were gonna have to pay in some direction, and this way it's just benefiting more members of the community.
I think you can make a strong argument on that. It's like, we're actually helping here by taking away an onerous requirement and just charging $25 instead of $100 policy.
Yeah, that's what I think as well.
So it could be helpful in the public messaging.
I think Maya's hopping on. I'd be
Oh.
curious to hear if she got any feedback about this in her training.
Yeah. Hey Maya, just to give you a quick update, the discussion is going towards the direction of not having an insurance requirement and just, rolling that cost into our general costs of like the fees and all that we charge right now. So just letting you know that's where we're at. But yeah, if you want to share anything.
Yeah, that's actually really good to know. So we did have somebody hop on, and I was kind of walking them through what their event would look like, and what insurance was actually a really big question. And it did about double the price of the event. So originally, I think the event for 6 hours, if a 6 hour event, it came out to about 125, and that was having cleanup during non-prime time, or setup during non-prime time, so setup was free. But it came out to about $125 based on the fact that it was on a Saturday. And because it was a private event, it was a birthday party, and she was expecting just under 100 people. She qualified, and there would be alcohol. Her event qualified in like hazard 2, which is $128 for the insurance given the event. So because of that, her total for what she owed us went from 125 to 300, which was a pretty big difference. The user did say that they were willing to pay, that they understood, and I explained that if they wanted to get their own insurance that they could, and it didn't have to be this much if they found something cheaper. They were still really receptive to it, but I do think that it does bring a cost barrier if that's something that was being discussed.
Okay, so this chart is something that they are currently paying us.
We're not using this yet because we haven't settled this, but this is what we could use if we put this in place.
And this is also not something that and unless this wasn't clear, this is not something we created. This is something that the insurance provides to us if we wanted to insure these events. And this is what we would charge them, and then we would have to pay the insurance separately.
We haven't done this before.
Yeah, okay, yeah, we'll do, yeah, I got that part,
Yeah.
but I was under the impression earlier when I was asking about this, like, that it was, I mean, something you had said that this was like the amount that you would pay them, not necessarily the amount that you would pay us. Yeah, so-
You'd pay us and we'd give it to them.
Sure,
Yeah,
sure,
yeah.
yeah, but,
And that's just because
so there was-
it's a quarterly payment from us, but like we would need the payment from them right away. So that's why like they pay us, we pay them kind of thing instead of them just paying each other.
So now I would say there's a little, I don't know if there's like, if I'm misunderstanding something or if there was like a disconnection here, but if that's the case, then I don't think that what we're describing would make it cheaper for this event that Maya is currently talking about. It would just make the conversation less confusing.
They wouldn't have to pay the $120. 128, if there was, they'd pay that if there was an insurance requirement.
They pay this right now because it's like a per event insurance requirement. And Jay, you're proposing us thinking about having a blanket event, like a wider blanket.
And then, yeah, but I was, yeah, so what I was hoping to have, right, is that we've dealt with an insurance company. We've got a nice policy that covers all the things that we do, and then potentially are passing through the costs of our extremely complicated insurance policy to events by the fee schedule that we have for them. But like in some sense, I guess that's what this was.
I don't know. Let me try to explain.
Okay, all right.
So we pay $50,000 a year for general liability insurance. That has a high level of coverage. It covers a lot of different things. Like I don't have to go to the insurance every time we do a new program or event to say, hey, can you cover the move-in sale, for example? It's broad coverage for us. And so, yes, if something happened at one of our events, we would go to our insurance company, put a claim in, etc. But our current policy does require the high intensity events 50 plus, like the policy from 2021. That's the one that requires people. If you have 50 people at your event, and Maya said this person has just under 100, so they need to pay us for the insurance. And then the insurance has these plans. They'd have to, when we go to the insurance and we're like, oh, we have a person who wants to buy a special event insurance, the hazard two is the thing they sell us. Does that make sense?
They're selling it. Okay.
They're selling it to us to them, like
okay. All
we're
right.
a middleman.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah.
But we couldn't go to the insurance and be like, oh, well, the party with alcohol, we want to get it a hazard one. Like we don't get to pick these hazards. These are from the insurance company.
Yeah.
And so if we did this system where if you're having your party and you want to pay the 120 for the fee to rent the space, and we still had the high intensity, I call it high intensity, we had the 50 plus rule for insurance, yeah, you would have to pay the 128 under the current policy right now.
Yeah. For what it's worth, I wasn't proposing that we just have uninsured events. I was intending that we have insurance that covers all of our events.
Yeah, I don't think our insurance sees it that way. Like our insurance doesn't see it that like we're getting coverage for the events. We're giving coverage for general liability, right?
Yeah.
So general insurance, anything, an event, a board meeting,
Is there
program offsite.
Is there a distinction between whether or not like our district is the host versus someone in the public is the host? There's a
distinction in the lawsuits and the claims. Like, something happens, someone trips and falls, they can, on the sidewalk right now, they can send a claim against us, they can send a claim on IVCSD, they can send on the county, they can send on the property
More
owner.
interestingly, they would do it to all of them under
Yeah.
the United States joint and several liability. You just blanket sue everyone involved and let the courts figure it out.
Yeah, so someone could sue us and the host and the person involved in the fault. And then the insurance company would start working it out and seeing, oh, CSD, are you liable? You have to pay your deductible on this. We would go through the insurance claim process.
Got it. And
they
so
do an investigation.
right now, it sounds like our policy is like, it's wide in the sense of like the coverage for us as a district, things that we host, but then because we have guests, the public, come in and host events in our spaces, then we would have to, like, each moment that somebody does that, we have to buy a like temporary insurance policy for that person's event.
We don't have to buy it.
Well,
they would have to.
Yeah, they pay the costs.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they're using our insurance provider.
They're buying, it's like a sub plan, essentially.
Got it.
They're not using our main plan. They're buying a plan through our insurance.
It's like this
A one
day
time,
on this.
yeah.
And so I'm thinking, based on what Jay started the comments on, which is like, we could then have like a wider policy that includes like people who are not affiliates or employed, et cetera, of our district, but they are guests, they're in the public. Now we have this even wider policy that like has a subsection that covers those folks. And that is somehow like a cheaper cost to the individual. Is kind of what I'm.
Yeah, it's cheaper to them because they won't have to pay us the 120,
Yeah.
right? They would just be, we would factor that into our operating costs. Then, like essentially it's, I don't want to say it's less insurance, but it's like it's having one plan instead of two. 'Cause
Yeah.
if they had their plan and we had ours, the claim would go against both plans, let's say, and then there'd be something happening there. But now, if we didn't have this, if they didn't buy a plan and they didn't have their own insurance already, and something happened at their event, the claim would go to us. And our insurance, we have a high payout amount, and it's like $10 million or something like that. It's pretty good insurance.
Yeah.
So our insurance could probably, I mean, we haven't had this yet, not that I want to jinx it, but we haven't had to go through this yet. So I can't have the experience of saying, here's exactly how it would go. Yeah. But right now, I mean, the hazard, the 50 plus high intensity events, they're not very many of the events. I'd say, I don't know what the percentage is. Maybe it's like 80% are not high intensity under the old rules, or I don't know what the number is.
I think I feel like it would maybe be like 75%. I mean, yeah.
So you'd be that's the gap right now, the coverage gap. We cover 75% of events. We don't cover the 25 right now. So if we did change this, we'd be expanding the coverage to the 25%.
And I do just want to point out, I think this is also important now that we have opened up the space for things like
The paid.
Yeah, I don't know how else to say other than like paid parties, like the paid events from other people coming in. And I think those do probably associate a higher risk than things that we've been used to in the past. So I do think it's important to consider things like that specifically. And require insurance. I think I have required insurance of those events in the past, and they've found things independently that honestly are a little bit cheaper than this. So it is up to the user if they want to use our cost or find something on their own. This is just something that like we can provide them. But I think especially when we look at things like alcohol, looking into insurance in some way is important because they also almost like a set of checks and balances for making sure that everything in the AVC is met too.
We don't have to come to a final decision today. I think it's good to talk this out.
Yeah, for what it's worth, I think the place where I'm going, my thoughts to make our complicated fee schedule even more complicated, but I do think it makes it easier on the user in the end. Because you have fewer people you have to contact and deal with. And I think it makes it also, there's a less intricacy to the explanation as to how to either start an event or pay for it, even though it might end up with a,
Yeah, I'm sure it does add like a complex layer when like Leslie is confirming a reservation and she's like, oh, well, you need this insurance. And now we have to go through the back and forth of
Yeah.
agreeing to that, paying us. Yeah.
But it also could be because I thought this was something slightly different than it was, that I'm solving a problem that doesn't really exist. So I'm sensitive to that. Yeah.
I mean, you can create a different insurance requirement where it covers 95% of events or something like that. We can pick something where it's like maybe alcohol is the thing that, I mean, I would personally say, like, alcohol you never know what happens when people are drinking. So creates a lot of risk, but so that could be one. It's like, oh, if
Yeah.
you have alcohol, you need insurance or something.
Thinking of it to me though, in terms of like whether or not you need insurance is also really confusing because it's like, I feel like at the end of the day, we want all of our events to be safe and we want to feel secure that if somebody decides to sue us over an event that occurred, that we are covered.
It's more like their guests, their random guests that, you know, it's a friend of a friend of a friend at that point, you know, like we might trust the host, but then someone comes there.
Yeah, but like I feel like we need to make certain that we are insured for things that can happen in the space.
No, we are.
And that and so it does, and to me it's like it just feels weird to be like, well, if you don't have alcohol there, you don't need insurance. It's like I feel like, well, we need insurance.
Yeah.
And then it's a matter of whether we want to charge them for insurance.
Well, it's
And
more
so
like,
it's like,
who's gonna, if it's more like the probability of something really bad happening is higher with alcohol. It might be more than our insurance is willing to cover. That's like the worst case scenario. It's like we have the insurance, we cover the event, something happens and we can't afford the payout. And that's where like maybe two insurances come in. Like two insurance plans are paying out into the claim.
it also could be that the mental model of how easy I want to make the user experience in some way just isn't how insurance works. That just like the insurance companies, I ran into this ridiculous scenario when I had decided to not have a car anymore, that I lost my general insurance policy. And I was like, I'm confused. Like that's like a policy for like, I'm at somebody's house and like something happens and they're like, yeah, but that's tied to your car insurance. And I'm like, can I just get one that's not? No, we don't offer that. We only offer it as an umbrella enhancement to a car insurance policy.
Yeah,
and it's like really so yeah.
I think what we're trying to say is like, at what level do we need extra coverage for, you know, when the worst case scenario happens and we have to pay out a settlement?
Yeah.
Is it when alcohol is involved? Is it when 1,000 people are going to be there? That's like, you know, or it could be none too, but people have alcohol at their events. I think it has a lot of room for bad things to happen.
Yeah, so I think I've asked a lot of questions that have like gotten us a little bit more turned around, but so I'll try to answer some of the simple questions that I've seen here. So like, to me as a director, it does matter whether or not an event has alcohol. That is the most important question when I look at these examples for like why I would want someone to carry that financial burden. I don't know, whichever method it happens, if it's through us or separately, but I think if the event has alcohol in it, then I want that person to be carrying some of that extra financial burden of insurance. About space, I don't see like which space you reserve as one way of like dodging that financial burden. Like, I'm gonna have a wine tasting event in the community room. I feel like you should still pay that financial burden. That's my personal opinion as a director. And then private is a little bit more gray area one to me. The more I've heard this whole conversation get talked about, it's like one tier below, maybe two tiers below the extra risk that I see happening with an alcohol planned event. So for me, it's the alcohol thing is becoming the main stick in my thought process.
Yeah, just only like 5% or less of events have alcohol.
Okay.
This is a very small amount.
Got it.
For what it's worth, I mean, to that extent, I key in on the sports one, but it's partly because relatively recently I went to somebody's birthday party that was Mario Kart Segway, and one of the attendees fell hard enough that she broke her collarbone. And so it's just like, if you start having people doing intense activities, certainly the cross product of alcohol and sports is the worst case scenario. but can you go back to the other chart, the cost, the insurance cost chart? Because like in some sense, my mental I just started replicating this by accident, right? Which is like, okay, well, it's like I bet sports events is a hazard 3, and so it's just
this is how do I explain? Maya explained this better to me when we talked. It's like, this is not for them to decide. This is for us to tell them, we need you to pay this plan based on the details we know of their event. So it's not like they're going to be picking between 1, 2, or 3.
Oh, they're not saying they're picking. Yeah, it's just like
Yeah.
I'm saying like what's happening is if I'm like trying to decide if there are certain types of events where I consider it to be more important that I have the insurance. That's this chart. The insurance company has told me that like a carnival is going to be something that apparently is way more dangerous. Apparently, a comedy show is way more dangerous than a
I had the
social event.
same thought. I had the same thought. It does seem a little politically charged also when you have union meetings as a hazard 3. I don't know. Like I said, I pulled this directly from the policy manual that I got from the insurance. But I will say in my conversation I had with the user literally just before this, I asked her, well, do you plan on having alcohol at your event? And she goes, well, I could lie to you, but of course we're going to have alcohol at the event. Like, of course we are. It's a birthday party. So I was like, oh, okay, well then, yes, then it would require insurance, and that's just something that we were just like talking about, like then it would probably fall into this category.
They're not going to have a comedy show, right? Like that would be really dangerous.
No,
I mean, and with our discretion, right? If somebody is requesting a comedy show, it's not gonna flag in my brain, oh my gosh, hazard 3, like they better give me $200 right away. Like I do think it's just important for us to think about like what is risky to us, and then we can help facilitate with our insurance. How to help.
See, I've now been staring at this chart so long. I am going to ask that. I've been thinking about this for a while now. But why is it that there are 4 attendance sizes, but there are 5 prices? Is one of them like 5,000 plus, maybe?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't know.
I wonder this whole time we're so off-centered, and I didn't even. I couldn't do it.
I didn't even look that close. I zoomed out. I just accepted.
I just didn't understand why they didn't line up.
I didn't notice that there, and I made
You
this.
gotta explain to our insurance company.
Honestly, that's me. I did that. I don't know. I think I copied it wrong, but I'm assuming that it's 5,000 plus and I ran out of room on the left, but I can fix it. It's a good guy.
All right. Well, I think we have some good direction and we'll keep working on something. It'll hopefully be simple and easy to understand. The sentence we come up with that essentially explains this. And I think this would be a good one to report out to the board that we had this discussion, and this is like the 2 things we're kind of leaning, just so they know, because I think they will get more interested in this.
Yes.
Than like they did in the previous policies. So.
Is there any public comment on this?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Oh, we have a chat. Oh, Olivia. No, yes, we're almost done.
Okay, moving on to future meetings, dates, and future agenda items. The next regular meeting of the policy committee will take place on Tuesday, October 15th, 2024 at 6 p.m. on Zoom and at the community room on 970 Barcadero Del Mar, Isla Vista, California. What's up, Marcos?
I want to know from you, Director Freeman, if there is an update around the
I am definitely intending to bring that to our next policy committee.
Appointment.
The appointment
I am intending on whatever it takes to
October.
I'm thinking because we've all thought about it a few times, and then as we come to the election and there'll be like new board members and like I don't want it to like disappear.
Yeah, no, I've been concerned about
Appointment process.
October
my
11th.
having put that off, continually messing that up. So yeah, I am intending on.
I don't know exactly what you're thinking yet, but I think it's going to be a hard one to like for us to flesh out.
Yeah.
So yeah,
and the board will be involved in that one.
Yeah, and other board members will be very curious.
All right. We're good.
Okay, is there any public comment on future agenda items?
I don't think so.
Okay, seeing none, we call this meeting adjourned at 7:38.
Bye.
Thank you.